Beautiful shot. My God, look at that. The perspective of the cross in the foreground and the sleepy little village nestled at the base of the mountain, dwarfed by it, looming so vast it disappears into fog. I mean, just that shot is already setting things up visually that start to do storytelling work. That the efforts of man, their labors, their buildings, because of the way the perspective is shot, are almost insignificant next to these greater forces. Looks like old Tristram.
Thy eternal light protects me. Thy divine wisdom guides me. Though my path is wrought with darkness, guide myself to thy sacred light. Blessed Akrat, thy eternal light protects me. Thy divine wisdom guides me.
Quiet.
Though my path is wrought with darkness.
Shut up.
Now what do we have here? A hole at the bottom of a church that leads into the unknown depths, where we hear the voices of terrible evil. Does that sound familiar? Because that was pretty much the first Diablo, and it is undoubtedly intentional. They are invoking their roots, and the terrified gibbering, much like Marius.
They have us sent. Run! Just keep running.
Are you out of your mind? He's not going to make it.
He has to.
Blessed Akrat, thy eternal light protects me. Thy divine wisdom guides
Look at me! All the gold we want is right there.
No, I just came here for knowledge.
They're coming!
I know.
Get over here!
Now, breach the seal. Get us through that door!
Oh my God, I am so happy. We are looking at legitimately skillful storytelling by Blizzard. The same people that just gave us World of Sylvanas, the Sylvanas Chronicles, have crafted something here. Let's just break it down a little bit. What I want to do with this is similar to what I did with the Shadowlands cinematic, which is not to say to roast it, but to rather kind of do a close reading of it. Did you notice how there was a really brief intro scene? It was basically 20, 30-ish seconds of setting. And as brief as it was all intentional. Things that were shown weren't just there to look neat. The perspective of the cross, the town, the mountain, the fog, the dilapidated church, the hole at the bottom. It was all a setup. And immediately following that, as our perspective plunges into the darkness, we are pitched straight into a story. And not in a way that... Remember from the Shadowlands trailer how I was talking about how Blizzard and generally lazy, cliche fantasy storytelling loves to fall back on super pausey narrative exposition? This is the opposite of that. And the difference, well, it's the difference between showing versus telling. I mean, think about this in telling form. You can imagine that very pausey narrative exposition in place of what they did here by just having a voiceover going... something like, "It is said that at the base of the tallest mountain lies a long forgotten church, and within the walls of this mouldering temple, a pit is open to the terrible darkness." They could have gone that way. Lots of people go that way. That way is telling. Instead, they just showed. And they jump straight into it. There's no exposition whatsoever, and yet the story, think about the scenes that followed going into that pit. We hear multiple voices. One of them's gibbering a prayer. We immediately know that this character is religious, or terrified, both. We hear other voices telling him to calm down. We hear another voice saying they've got our scent, run, and we hear the screaming. Just by that exchange of dialogue, we know there's a group of people sneaking around somewhere dangerous. One of them's kind of a coward, and they're about to be in big trouble. Not a word of exposition was muttered. And it continues. You see him running. You start to see which voices belong to who. You see the fearful one is wounded. And immediately characterization begins because two of the bandits just want to abandon him. And old One Eye is putting himself at personal risk to carry him along. And of course, you learn they're there for gold. And again, not a word of exposition needed. Because let me tell you something. Let me tell you a secret. It's never needed. You writers out there, you storytellers, you game designers and developers looking to convey stories in this way, if you find yourself leaning on exposition, you're being lazy. There's always another way. Show, don't tell. And here are our bandits drawing curved swords, which are much more iconic to the outlaw type than straight swords. Like a cutlass, like a pirate weapon. You ever notice that? You think it's a coincidence? It's not. Let me give you one of the reasons it's not right here. What are straight swords really good at that curved swords aren't quite as good at? Thrusting. And when are thrusting attacks a very effective strategy? When you're in formation. When you're holding the line, disciplined, protecting the people to your side. Do outlaws fight like that? Scoundrels, bandits, treasure hunters? No, they do not. There are no accidents in good storytelling.
Oh, Lord, help me. By three they come. By three thy way opens. Blood show. This doesn't make any sense. Blood. Blood is the key. Blood is the key!
What?
I need two of you!
No! Go! I'll hold them! Go!
So, it says the blood of the willing goes...
You gotta be kidding me! It worked!
We have to help him!
He's dead already.
Oh man, that really got me when I first saw it. In the span of like 3 minutes, they had managed to get me invested in these characters I had no previous knowledge of. They're complete strangers, don't even know their names. And just because of the skillful way that they set the scene up, that they used storytelling, I experienced genuine tension as they were trying to get in that door. Because you don't know. You don't know who the protagonist is or if there is one. You don't know what kind of a story world this is. You don't know if it's one of the ones where danger's always an illusion and it's just there to create a false sense of tension and the good guys always get away in the end. Or is this more like a George R.R. Martin kind of deal? And you really do have to be worried when people get in danger. You have no idea. So you can feel the desperation in them holding back those little nibbly boys and figuring out the key and One Eye following through on the character arc that's already been set up for him as kind of a selfless individual. Even if he is motivated by gold, he stands back and puts himself in danger for the whole group to hold them back. And did he seem familiar to anyone, just visually? One Eye covered with strips of linen, wielding fire, standing as a bulwark, sacrificially to hold things off. That very well could be a nod to Beric Dondarrion. Just a little one, just a little wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Could be, from a purely visual standpoint. But we also see the other characters continue to be fleshed out. The bandits that wanted One Eye to drop the wounded man were very quick to turn on him when it suited them. No honor among thieves. And I'll admit, I was genuinely pissed a little bit. When I first saw it, I was like, you sons of bitches. And why? Why do I feel that way with complete strangers? Skillful storytelling.
It's a shame he didn't make it. Oh well, cheer up. Gold splits better 3 ways instead of 4.
I guess there's an Ireland in Sanctuary.
Must be hidden here somewhere. Read this.
By three they come, by three thy way opens, by the blood of them willing. Hail. Hail the Creator. Ha! Hail the daughter of... Oh, no. No, no, no.
What about the coin? What's it say?
This is forbidden. This is a summoning. I cannot speak.
Don't lie to me!
We came here for treasure. What is this place?
I don't know. Maybe it's a temple. Or a tomb, or... It's a gate.
Couple of notes here. Did you catch that? That actually was a tiny bit of exposition. It wasn't necessary. It was a redundancy. We know they're there for treasure. That's why One Eye said, all the gold you could ever want is beyond this door. They didn't need to spell it out like that. But if you're gonna do exposition, this is a slightly more skillful way to do it. Through dialogue like that? Still exposition, though. There's also some cool visual symbolism in the way that the stone door slammed, trapping them in that room. That was sort of tomb-like. And when the camera pans up and you see that spinning shot of the ceiling, you kind of see these stone figures with their hands crossed over their chests, which again, kind of sarcophageal, which kind of sets up a foreboding, you know they're in trouble. And it does this purely visual, this is visual storytelling. It takes place over a few seconds, but it plants that seed in your brain without having to say a single word. And how would an amateur handle it? How would a modern World of Warcraft trailer writer handle it? Within that darkness lay a temple that was itself a gate opened by blood. Not these writers, though. These writers are pro. Classic horror movie stuff right there. The guy getting jerked off camera and his torch goes out at the set. How many monster movies have you seen where that happened? And then he's right behind him when the camera angle shifts? Ah, I love it.
Blessed Akrat, thy eternal light protects me. Thy divine wisdom guides me. Though my path is wrought of darkness, guide my soul to thy sacred light.
From the abyss, receive thy salvation. By three they come, by three thy way. By the blood of the willing. We call thee home. Come.
Blessed Akrat, thy eternal light protects me. Thy divine wisdom guides me. Though my path is
Open
wrought
your
of
eyes.
Eternal light protects me. Eternal light protects me. Eternal light protects me. Eternal light protects me. Eternal
There
light.
is no light here. You came to the darkness.
Oh my God, this is amazing. Just, I don't even, there's so much. There's so much compacted into each little moment. So One Eye wasn't what he seems. He's clearly a supernatural entity attached to this location. A villain that, let me just see if I can list some of these. A villain with telekinesis that uses telekinesis like a villain, beautiful. You don't get to see that. Usually bad guys with that kind of a power just knock people down. Choke them, maybe. But there's all this ritualistic symbolism. The circles and the triangles inside the circles and the symbols and human beings becoming, well, it's blood sacrifice, which is a really old religious symbol. But you see it kind of animated literally here, where the blood drawn out starts to take the form of the writing of the room. The blood itself becomes the ritual. But anyway, really cool villain, really cool aesthetic. Kind of got a Jeremy Irons as the psychic commander of the Morlocks thing kind of going on. If you saw that version of Time Machine, that's what he kind of, the voice and the mannerisms. Not a particularly good film, that one, but the Jeremy Irons character was cool. But then when he pulls the bald guy to him, and he says, "There is no light here," the shot of his eyes, and they're like black mirrors reflecting the bald guy back at him and saying, "You came to the darkness for knowledge." And you've got the image of the bald guy encompassed by the darkness of the eyes of the villain, and the eyes are the window to the soul. And he's kind of the darkness with the hidden knowledge. And then it switches perspectives, and you see the fear start to leave the bald guy, and you see it from his eyes reflecting the villain back at him. So it's like you see his influence. Because again, the eyes are the window to the soul, and so it's like his soul is being overrun by the image of this villain, and it's kind of calming him in a way. It just beautiful, just in a few seconds. And again, not a word of exposition, purely showing, but just brilliant. I just want to hug these people.
For knowledge.
Yes.
And all the knowledge you seek is here. Surrender. Speak the words. Call her home.
By 3, they come. By 3, thy way opens. By the blood of the willing, we call thee home.
Why did he do it, do you think? Was it a form of mind control? Maybe. There certainly was a lot in that scene to suggest supernatural influence over him. But nothing is on accident in good storytelling. Did you see him look down at his wound like that, at his hand? I think maybe he knew he was going to die, either way. And he was clearly devoted to knowledge. So maybe he wanted his death to not just be bleeding out in the dark. Maybe he wanted to see something before he died. Really cool use of perspective, being locked on him and showing the rest of the world turning upside down, because the character itself had become inverted at that point. When he arrives in that room, he's talking about how it's forbidden and he cannot, and he's very kind of, you could tell his belief system finds this place abhorrent, but now he's willingly given into it. I mean, he's flipped it all upside down, and so to have that camera shot kind of parallel that, and you can hear that little sound cue that was associated with the villain's telekinesis, and you can see the flip. That was a really cool little detail too. While he's being shifted, you can hear the brrr. One question though, by the blood of the willing, only he was willing. The other guys, I don't think they wanted their days to end up so crunchily. So that's a little odd in terms of fitting the rules of the ritual. I guess 1 out of 3 is good enough. Also, and this is my final criticism of the piece, which as a whole is just hands down brilliant, there is a plot hole. This villain, this pale figure, clearly knows what this place is. He calls it a gate. He very intentionally led these people here to perform the ritual. He was familiar with what it needed. So it seems unlikely, according to how they set their story up, that he wouldn't know how to open the door in the beginning. I mean, he says it's a gate and it's opened by blood. He recites the words. He's familiar with this language, with the ritual. He would have known that blood opened that gate. And by not telling the people he lured there how to do that, he actually risks the ritual not happening if they get overrun by monsters, right? Because if even one of them dies, it's not by 3. So why do that? Why put the ritual at risk telling the other guy to figure out how to open it when it's very likely you knew how to open it? I mean, I guess you could say he didn't, but then you can't give him those lines where he's so knowledgeable about everything. It's just, it's not a huge deal, but and again, the cinematic is brilliant, but you can love something and still criticize it.
Hail, daughter of hatred. Creator of sanctuary. Hail.
This shot is no accident. Diablo has always borrowed from Judeo-Christian iconography and motifs. Does this look familiar to you? While not identical, it certainly shares some parallels with Michelangelo's The Creation of Adam. You got the 2 hands reaching toward each other, the divine figures coming from the upper right, the mortals coming from the bottom left. It's subtle, it's just a hint of it, but it is on purpose.
Lilith.
That name is on purpose too, and I don't just mean within the context of Diablo's lore. Lilith was a figure in some of the apocryphal texts of the Bible, and like anything from those texts, information about her is contentious. Some say she was part of a story where she was the first wife of Adam before Eve, but she was cast out of Eden for refusing to submit to Adam, and then she became kind of a demonic figure that gave birth to demons. And there are a lot of different versions of the story around her, but again, using that name is intentional. And did you notice how they indicated the moment of the bald guy's death when the image of the 2 hands faded from his pupil? Again, eyes being windows to the soul. That moment encapsulated his entire being, her coming into the world and making contact. He was completely absorbed by it. It was all that he saw. And when his eyes stopped reflecting that, that's the moment he dies. Also, did you notice how she came through that portal face? First of all, have you ever seen it's just so cool. I cannot contain myself. Have you ever seen a portal that's not just blood? It's made from blood and viscera. You can see veins in it. But this is very clearly birth symbolism. And isn't that fascinating? She came through head first, as if being literally born into the world. And her flesh has the way they drew her, she's translucent in the way that a fetus is. And she's referred to as daughter and mother. It's beautiful. It's beautiful and dark. And there's just not enough of that. There's not enough of that. Everyone's playing it safe. Everyone's skirting around even depictions of violence. And here these guys have taken imagery and symbolism from Christianity and paganism and sex and death and just threaded it all together just beautifully.
Blessed Mother, save us.
Oh my God, that is the coolest thing I have seen in years. Did you see that? I've got chills. Can you? I don't know if you can see it. My hair is standing up. I've already seen this thing. The pieces of the portal started falling like petals, like the end of a tree's blossom, which has to do with fertility. And when she comes down through this portal, it's simultaneous. You know how I was talking about earlier how it's as if she was being born. It's birth symbolism. It's so cool. It's so cool. So you think about the womb being the door to the world, and they do that in this kind of supernatural way. And she comes head first, and she's fetal. And then the portal becomes draped around her like a birth call, but in such a way that it's like this badass mantle. That imagery, that just, have you ever seen anything like that? Who thought this up? Can I just want to make out with them, all of them. Oh my God. It just, stuff like this just gets me going. As much as bad writing and that dumbass Sylvanas cinematic can just depress me and annoy me, this makes me think, man, well, life really is worth living, isn't it? Jesus. Just, that was amazing. And it was refreshing. And it was also, I don't know how many of you played Diablo 3. I felt some of the core gameplay was really solid, purely in terms of you slot your abilities and the way that you, basically, the classes themselves conceptually were cool and had their own unique identities. I wasn't a fan of the animation, but just when you leap into a pack of zombies as a barbarian and you're whirlwinding and limbs are flying off in different directions like you left the lid off of a blender, you can't help but just rub butter all over your body and slide out of your chair moaning. I mean, it's really fulfilling being a witch doctor and swarming locusts, and there definitely were core cool gameplay mechanics. The story, though, oh my God. I was literally screaming at my computer. It was so horrible. And what was even more frustrating is Blizzard refused to acknowledge it. They were just like, oh, well, some people feel this way, but we've gotten plenty of compliments. And, some people are passionate and they feel a certain way. And we're just going to have this random-ass butterfly fairy kill Deckard Cain, and she's gonna, every time she appears, there's gonna be a flute play. And we're gonna have Diablo have granny tits, and his feet are gonna be high heels. And Leia's really hot, though, so. And Tyrael's the guy from the Allstate commercials, and the most obvious person to be the Demon of Deception is the Demon of Deception. And Diablo's gonna message you on his magic walkie-talkie every 5 seconds when you're in the high heavens and say, I'm gonna kill you! So, to see this come along, after that's what Diablo 3 was, it's like, okay, story was never a focal point of the Diablo games, and then it became so in 3, and I thought, wow, just stay away from story. But now to see this, I'm like, I am tentatively hopeful. The thing is, though, I titled this piece The Promise of Diablo IV, and that's the irony. The Promise of Diablo IV is unknown because this is only a cinematic and the game could be garbage. You cannot tell anything about a game, anything, by a cinematic. So as brilliant as this is, as amazing as it is, remain critical. Game very well may still suck. The writing within the game may very well still suck. Could be a completely different team, very likely is a completely different team working on this cinematic than would have anything to do with the writing and story in the game. Maybe, I don't know. That's the point. From this cinematic, we can tell nothing from the game, but it opens a door to some very hopeful potential. Now, I think I've rambled on long enough about this. I'm going to put it up. I am not sure if I'm going to be making dailies for much longer. I don't know. I know that they don't seem to be growing the channel. I mean, people seem to like them. I'm getting really good positive feedback, but it's just not, even doing one a day, the subscribers aren't really going up. And if that continues to be the case, I doubt Jeremy's going to want me to do them anymore. It's been fun, but the purpose was to grow the channel, and if it's not going to do that, there's just no point. So this might be one of the last ones? Don't know. Sharing it would be helpful. All of you people saying, oh, I like your feedback, I like your thoughts, share it. Help this channel get subscribers, and I can make more of these videos. If not, I can't. And if it turns out that way, I'll do one final goodbye daily. because you guys have been really great along the way. You guys have been really encouraging. You've taught me a lot, and I enjoy that you enjoy listening to me ramble. It's fun. But I'm going to go ahead and go for now. Might go watch this cinematic again. But I'll see you all again, maybe for the last time, next time.